Hello there everybody, and today I want to talk to you about learning to be comfortable wearing one of these things. Two things before we get into the content. Number one, can we just appreciate how mega and amazingly on brand this mask is? Got really lucky on this one when someone pointed it out to me on Etsy, otherwise I'd have never found one that so wonderfully fits with my circuit brain. And secondly, remember that you can talk to me live on twitch.tv/mindsetbydave between 7 and 10 p.m. on every Sunday and between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. every Tuesday, where we can talk about mindset, mental health, and anything in between. Right, let's get on with the video, but let's get this thing off first so you can see my face. Okay, so a lot of people have actually said to me that they're really struggling with wearing masks because it makes breathing difficult. And especially when we couple that with someone who's already got anxiety, this can be a real problem because it can just make the anxiety worse. What anyone with anxiety will know is that your breathing gets affected by your condition. But actually, it's a bit of a two-way street because once your breathing's effective, it can make you feel like your condition is flaring up as well. This is something that's worth bearing in mind. It's why breathing techniques are actually such an effective tool for dealing with anxiety attacks up to a certain level. And the same is true here, is that way in which the mask will alter your breathing can be enough to exacerbate any feelings of anxiety that are already there. This is not someone being dramatic. It's just someone, well, they've never learned to breathe. Here's the thing, how many times in your life have you learned to breathe? Chances are zero. You did it naturally. You learned how to do it whilst you were a newborn. You were totally and utterly unaware of it, and you've always been able to breathe. And unless you've done something where you learn to breathe in a different way, then chances are it's just something that you just kind of go your entire life without realizing, without even thinking twice about. And that's fine. And I think the only reason I think about this in a different way is because of three different situations. Number one, scuba diving. Number two, meditation. And number three, a trip to Peru last year. Now, in each one of these situations, I had to learn to breathe. With meditation, you learn to breathe in lots of different ways, and you learn to control your breath rather than having that automatic response. This shows you how breathing can interact with a lot of different things within your life and how you can control it. But ultimately, with meditation or yoga or anything like that, it's like learning to breathe for the first time. And it can be quite difficult. Now, my number one rule of mindset is we get better at the things we do often. And quite frankly, we've not wore these often. We're not in a society where we do. And this is why you'll often see it with memes or even just posts online where people working within the medical profession say, I wear this thing all day, you can just get on with it. Yes, they wear it all day and therefore have practiced it. If that medical professional remembers back to day one, probably wasn't as comfortable for them to have it on then as it is now. This is a brand new phenomena for you. And this is where we can actually make some progress with it. So that's number one, meditation. Number two, with scuba diving. Same principle. When I went to scuba dive, I'm a nose breather, except for when I'm talking, and let's face it, I'm always talking, but I'm a nose breather. When I went to scuba diving, you can't nose breathe. You can only mouth breathe, and you have to breathe in and out through your mouth. Now, what that meant for me was I was having to learn to breathe all over again in a completely different way. Then I was being thrown into a situation where things could make you a little bit panicky. I was underwater for the first time in my life, other than, putting a mask and a snorkel on and diving a little bit before in my childhood. And it became one of those things where I was very nervous in that situation. And when you're nervous, what do? We tend to hyperventilate. It's the most counterproductive thing for us in the world. Our brain tells us that we need to breathe, so we breathe as fast as humanly possible. And actually all that does is starves our brain of oxygen, makes us feel worse, makes us make worse decisions. And in that position, what you need to do is breathe as deeply and as slowly as you possibly can. And by taking the time to exert that control over your own breath, it can bring you down, bring you back to clarity and make the whole situation less anxious. But if we go in the opposite direction, we end up in this sort of circle of anxiety where things just don't get any better. And then the more you panic, the faster you breathe, the more you panic, and so on and so forth. And I had the same thing. I'd almost forgotten about this until last year. I went to do the Inca Trail in Peru. And for the first time, probably one of the first times in my life, but definitely the first time at such a high altitude in my life. And the air is a lot more thin. And I was finding it that I had to breathe a lot deeper in order to get the oxygen that I needed. The automatic breath that I'd trained to do, that I'd practiced to do for my 37 years of life until this point, wasn't doing the job. And I had to think about how I was breathing all over again. And that took time, it took practice, and it took conscious effort over your breath, which takes conscious effort away from the other things that you're doing, and you can't really try and do too much at once. I was actually in a weird situation. I think it was on the first or second night there. There's a lot of protests going on in that part of the world at the time, and there was a protest going on in the main square, and a homeless person came up and grabbed me on the arm. And I'm not usually easily sort of frightened by things like that, but I was really freaked out by this. And I think it was because that entire evening, I'd been realizing that I can't really breathe here, and I'm trying to learn to breathe all over again. And it really freaked me out and stuck with me. And it's probably not because of just the isolated incident, but probably the combination of it. Now, the reason I tell you all of this isn't so I can sit here and share stories about all the cool stuff I've done in my life. It's because all of it is underpinned by the same principle. And that principle is, when we put one of these things on, we are learning to breathe, possibly for the first time. For me, it's the fourth time, or fifth time if you count when I learned automatically as a kid. I learned to breathe through meditation, I learned to breathe through scuba diving, I learned to breathe in the high altitude, and now I'm learning to breathe on this. And I think this is one of the big reasons that this hasn't been too much of a problem for me. Because the first day I put this on, my breathing was shocking. But learning to breathe is a reasonably well-practiced concept for me. For the rest of you, it's really not. If you've never done it before, that's the problem here. It's not that you're not good at it, it's that you've never really practiced it. So when you put that mask on and you struggle to breathe in it, and you're already in maybe an anxious situation, let's say you've not been out the house for a long period of time, you're anxious being around other people, which is what came up on the Q&A I did last week so many times, then of course, when the breathing isn't working the way you want it to, that anxiety is going to feed into the anxiety about your breath, and the whole thing is going to go around in this circle. So what can you do about it? Number one, accept that this is normal. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. You've just not practiced this particular skill yet. And that seems strange to us, right? Because we think, well, we should just be able to breathe. Okay, the reality is in this situation, you find it difficult. So what do you need to do? Well, number two, what I would recommend, we are currently only really wearing these things when we go out of the house. I'm going to recommend something that might sound a little bit crazy to you. I want you to pop it on in the house. I want you to pop it on when you're in your perfectly calm situation. You just sat there watching the TV. And I want you to realize that you might have to learn to breathe again. And right now, as I'm talking, and as soon as I've put this on, my breathing has changed, right? So what you might have to do is just spend a little bit more time having that breath, allowing yourself to feel calm. And the reason I want you to do this in the house is because there's nothing else, hopefully, making you anxious in that situation. There's nobody else around. There's no one else to worry about. The other things about going out the house aren't there to give you more things to worry about. So you can actually just isolate the breath, focus on that and practice. Now, you may want to spend as little time in this thing as humanly possible. So what I'm suggesting right now might seem really counterintuitive. Well, here's the thing. The reason that those doctors and the people who have to wear these things out of necessity find it so much easier than you do is because they've practiced it. And if you can change your relationship to this by maybe forcing it in the house, then you can change your relationship to that while you're out the house. And that is going to make things a hell of a lot more easy for you. So, I hope this has helped. As always, if you've enjoyed this content, if you've got some value from it, please hit that subscribe button. And remember, if you want to come along and chat to me at any point during those streams, Sunday night, 7 till 10 p.m. UK time, Tuesday daytime, 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. I would love to have you as part of the community. And remember, keep breathing. See you soon.